Metroid Prime 4 Beyond just had its first trailer drop a few weeks ago, as of the recording of this video. And I wanted to talk about it because the pieces to a larger narrative is starting to come into focus, concerning what Nintendo's vision is for the near future. So I'm going to be talking about Nintendo's relationship to their IPs, what I think their treatment of Metroid games in recent years says about them and their new console, and then I'm going to end the video with a sort of brief reflection on my channel as a whole and its future. The first thing we should note about Beyond is that the game looks good, and in fact it looks like it was tailor-made to fulfill a particular narrative. The game appears to look and play almost exactly like the original Metroid Prime. It opens with Samus emerging from her ship and somersaulting off of it. It's a first-person perspective in which you can target enemies, scan things for information, morph ball, space pirates, Metroids, and all of these things are back and implemented in basically the same way they were 20 years ago. Even something like the targeting system is here, which is interesting because it's not something we need nowadays. It was more of a concession done for the way in which the original game needed to function to support its mixture of action and exploration. But we now have games like Doom Eternal, which leans in that direction also, and it does not feel the need to limit itself with a lock-on mechanic. To me, these are all very conscious choices, and these choices convey a more significant message that I don't see anyone else talking about. What seems clear to all of us is that Nintendo wants Beyond to be in line with the original in every conceivable way. But what we aren't paying attention to is that this is a very curious choice. And it's curious because it's basically confirmed at this point that Nintendo needs a successor to the Nintendo Switch, and it's likely going to be announced sometime this year and will launch in 2025. That's the prevailing thought on the matter as it currently stands. There's been no announcements for a new mainline Mario or Zelda title, and so some people are speculating that perhaps Beyond will be a launch title for the new system. If this happens, it's an extremely bold and unusual move on the part of Nintendo. Normally they want Mario or Zelda to hold that honor, in part because they are popular and because they sell well. But they also prefer those series because they afford Nintendo the freedom to adopt innovative ideas. They're malleable series, and they can be reshaped to sell the prospect of the new console's gimmick. For example, I've talked extensively on this channel in the past that Breath of the Wild was a launch title for the Nintendo Switch, in part because it helped people get on board with the vision Nintendo had for the console. The game is very easy to pick up and put down, which makes it ideal for short sessions. There's the in-game Sheikah Slate, which bridges the real and fantasy worlds by being a futuristic tablet within the game itself. And its focus on nature and escaping to new places are emblematic features not only of the game, but in the marketing and the overall product vision. You can take your AAA games with you anywhere now. Since 2017, the gaming landscape has changed, and now handheld gaming PCs are becoming more common, and they pose a threat to future Switch sales because the Switch is very underpowered, and every day more and more people, even casual players, are starting to see that. Normally we'd expect to see Nintendo offer something new, something we didn't realize we wanted, but I don't think that will happen this time. So my prediction is this. Nintendo has been carefully priming us for Metroid Prime 4 for a very long time now. The game was announced all the way back in 2017. Then it restarted development 2 years later, and they also passed development responsibilities to Retro Studios, who are the original designers behind the previous Prime trilogy. There was no Metroid game throughout the entire Wii U era. So, at the time, this looked simply like Metroid was overdue for a resurgence, but it may have been part of a larger objective. 2 years after that, Metroid Dread launches in conjunction with a console refresh in the form of the Nintendo Switch OLED. And they hyped that game up. It was a 2D Metroid game that was given the red carpet treatment by Nintendo and was specifically positioned to help add a justification to buy their new premium console. Another 2 years passes and they release a remaster of the original Metroid Prime. And now Prime 4 is scheduled to release in 2025, 2 years after that remaster. Remember that big corporations like Nintendo must make plans many years in advance. They give the green light on projects as those projects serve the larger focus of the company's strategies to make money. And because development time is very long, you can't be short-sighted. When Nintendo restarted development on Prime 4, they mentioned that the quality of the game was not up to their standards, and they gave this as the reason for why it was necessary to restart. From what we've heard, it sounded as though its development was indeed troubled, but perhaps now it's conceivable that part of the reason it was not up to their standards is that they may have wanted it as a potential option to launch their next console. This would be very long-term planning, so I'm not necessarily sure that is the case, but I do think it's at least possible that they realized it might have to serve that role, and if it must do that, it will have to be of significantly better quality that only retro studios can provide. You can't sell a console with a game like Other M, that just will not work. Now, there's also the kind of lackluster way Metroid Prime Remaster was announced. It was shadow dropped from out of nowhere, which is not something I would have done if I wanted people's attention on Metroid. But perhaps that was intended so that it would add to the unpredictability of what we can expect. But more importantly, the remaster was primarily handled by Retro Studios. When Nintendo told Retro to build Prime 4, they more than likely also requested a remaster of the original. And when they did, I don't think it's unlikely they may have told them about the prospect of Prime 4 needing to be a cross-generation title, and to take careful attention of what makes Prime so successful, and to specifically attempt to emulate that success with Beyond. If Beyond is to be a launch title for the successor to the Switch, I find this to be an exceptionally bold choice. And it's especially interesting to me because the game is about as anti-gimmicks as it could have been. Furthermore, Metroid games are not popular. If we look at the highest selling games on the Switch, Metroid Dread is like number 43 with something like 3 million copies sold. That's a paltry amount compared to the 62 million copies of Mario Kart 8 Deluxe. Even Breath of the Wild sold 31 million. It basically sold 10 times the amount as Metroid Dread, and Dread is the best selling Metroid game just ever. Now, Breath of the Wild has the advantage of being a launch title on a system that basically had very few games when it released, but still. So you can see where this would be a highly risky prospect. The other strange thing with this though is the lack of gimmicks. If Beyond was to take advantage of some unique hardware interfacing, it's clearly not necessary because it will also need to be backwards compatible with the Switch. But also, this is a no-frills classic first-person Metroid game. And if this were Mario, Zelda, Star Fox, hell, even Paper Mario, no other franchise of Nintendo's seems to be immune to the gimmick hammer. And, not all gimmicks are bad, but Nintendo seems to be excluding Metroid from this for the foreseeable future. Most Metroid games are highly regarded, with Super Metroid and Metroid Prime being cited frequently as some of the best games ever made. And what's more, they are still leading titles in their own genre. While it's true that there exists no shortage of Metroidvania titles, many of which are well made and decently popular, I think the launch of Dread solidified that Metroid is still king of the genre. For those of you who don't know, I have a pretty scathing critique of Breath of the Wild on my channel. And while I do think that video is long-winded in places, and I don't necessarily agree with every statement in it, I do still hold to most things, which is why I won't take it down. But the part I no longer agree with is the attitude that suggests Nintendo was on a path to simplify their games so far that many of them would lose appeal for me, and people like me, who grew up playing Nintendo games and expect and prefer the challenging titles they used to provide. I think, for the most part, this has actually happened. Tears of the Kingdom was just more Breath of the Wild, and while some series have been treated well, many of them have been reduced to these very kid-friendly, deceptively easy experiences. But credit where credit is due, Nintendo has been treating Metroid well in recent years. When you look at other game franchises such as Halo and Castlevania, it becomes very illuminating very quickly when you realize that Metroid has never become a trend follower, and attempts to dethrone it have been largely unsuccessful. Metroid Dread is the best-selling Metroid title, and it received very positive reviews. That's something that wouldn't have happened if there was some other Metroidvania that was taking that slot away from it. Metroid may not be overly popular or profitable, but it's a series that is inarguably prestigious and respectable. And I think now more than ever Nintendo is aware of this. And I think when they greenlight a Metroid game, their priorities will often be to maintain this course of respectability, to perform well at, or at least get the attention of award shows, and to act as a demonstration for high-end premium graphics and design standards. They might experiment from time to time, but I think its history has solidified its place in the gaming landscape. While there is still time for Nintendo to pivot, it would be interesting to see Nintendo give Metroid the honor of launching their console. I'm not entirely sure how smart this would be from a business standpoint, but perhaps by giving it that role, it will earn a much wider following by somewhat artificially inflating the sales to help grow its fanbase. I wouldn't expect it to topple Mario or Zelda, but assuming that something is impossible leads to a narrow-minded view which can have a negative impact in the long term. The game you choose to be the face of the console gives the console a very specific kind of image, and if the chosen game is Metroid Prime 4, it suggests that the console it will be paired with will have less of a focus on gimmicks and innovation, and instead will have a greater emphasis on high-quality tech. It would essentially fall in line with the philosophy of the Super Nintendo, the GameCube, and the Wii U, consoles whose primary focus is to improve upon their predecessor, not to disrupt the fanbase, and not to rock the boat too much. I think this also would pretty much guarantee backwards compatibility. Zelda can sell a new console on its own, but I don't think Nintendo trusts Metroid with that much responsibility, and that's probably for the best. But I can envision a scenario where the new console is this very polished Super Switch, and that you can bring over all your last-gen games to the console with ease, and that the new game to buy alongside it will be Metroid Prime 4, a game that can showcase what the power of the console can do, in a similar way to how Dread helped make the OLED get some footing. We have a new Nintendo president, and this will be their first console launch. Yes, they launched the Switch, but basically all of that had already been in motion for him. And maybe playing things a little safe just makes more sense. I don't think Nintendo needs or wants everyone to make a 180 with something totally new. I think they're more interested with a drip feed uptake, and Metroid Dread demonstrated that it can serve that role nicely. So that's my theory. We'll have to wait and see what happens. I won't be covering business speculations too much more in the future, but this one was an exception, so I wanted to articulate my thoughts, and I figured it would make for a good excuse to also give a little channel update. The first thing I want to say is that from now on, my videos will pretty much exclusively follow the same format as my most recent Castlevania 4 commentary. In other words, long-form videos in which I play the game from beginning to end and comment on every minutia that comes to mind. I'm much happier making that style of video, and the linear structure of it gives me enough room to say everything I need to say, and I hope keeps me from getting too rambly. I know that's definitely a problem in past videos of mine, and it's something I want to have greater control over in the future. I will also change up the format sometimes and do comparisons somewhat in the vein of my Breath of the Wild critique, where I was drawing contrasts with past entries in a series to illuminate the changes in the new. The difference is that I won't be doing that style of a video in such a critical way, and in general, there won't be nearly as many critiques. I don't like bringing so much negativity into the world, and I don't like how I was trying to make myself some kind of caricature. But I also don't want to commit to never doing a critique again, so don't hold your breath for a critique in the near future, but who knows, it could happen. I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who's been watching my channel. I think most everyone is here because of that Breath of the Wild video. It happens every so often that someone watches that video and has something nice to say about the quality of the work I put into it, and that really does mean a great deal to me. I regret letting the channel drop so easily in the past, but from now on, that will no longer be the case. So, my promise to you is that I will be releasing at least one video on this channel every year until I drop dead. The reason there won't be more than one is that the kind of videos I like to make are extremely long and labor intensive. They take actual months to complete, and they compete with other responsibilities and projects in my life. So when I say one video, I mean a good, chunky, couple-hour video. And if it is shorter, it'll be because the game is shorter or I was simply more efficient with how I condense the information. I don't know when these videos will go up in the year, but they will often coincide with my other channel. For those of you who don't know, I have another channel I run called the Official Oscarinas. It is an award show format in which my friends and I discuss the artistic strengths and weaknesses of games and have some friendly and light competitive debates to determine a list of nominees and winners. You can watch the first season right now, and the second season is deep into production as we speak, but it will probably be a month or so more until it launches, as I prefer to be at least at the 80% completion mark before I upload anything about it. The Castlevania 4 video was made as sort of a comparison with the Oscarina show, because I found I had a tremendous amount to say about the game, and it wouldn't all fit in the award show discussion videos, and so that sparked an idea, and more often than not, I will be covering games to coincide with the awards. The theme is currently retro games, but we do cover 2 years in one real-life year, because we wanted to firmly establish a history of the art medium. I think that's tremendously important, and I think in the long run it will be very beneficial. If you're looking for a place to start, I would probably recommend the ActRaiser discussion. We ended up talking much longer about that game than I or my co-host anticipated. We had a great time doing so, and it's become a sort of staple for us internally as a good video framework to follow. If you'd like to support me either with this channel or the Oscarinas, I have a Patreon account set up, and any help there would be much appreciated. But honestly, for right now, I really just need more eyes on my work. So sharing my videos with people you think will enjoy them would be an enormous benefit. And that's probably everything I have that would be applicable to anyone who watches this, but believe it or not, there are a lot of other things I work on as well. For example, I have a third YouTube channel called Harlan is in Danger. That channel is co-hosted by my friend Tom, and together we play Arkham Horror the card game on it. The channel is mostly an excuse for us to play the game, but we get up to some pretty funny hijinks. I think if you're not familiar with the game, you could still watch it, but you might be a little lost on the mechanics. It's one of our favorite games of all time though, so it's worth checking out for yourself, especially if you come from a video gaming background. Outside of that, I am also a novelist, a board game designer, and I have 2 separate teaching gigs, and I'm also planning a move that will happen in 2025. I'd also like to talk about movies at some point. It'll just be a matter of figuring out how to juggle everything. So when I say I can promise only 1 video a year, it's not because I don't want to do more. It's just that I want a really quality video, and I have many other creative and personal endeavors I need to manage, so it's really the best I can do under the circumstances. However, if I ever catch enough wind on the internet, I can scale back on my regular day jobs and focus more heavily on my other projects. And any support you can give me is most appreciated. Now, this video does not count as the 1 video per year rule, and you can expect the next video to drop probably sometime in November or December of this year. And while I don't want to spoil anything, I will say that I am writing 2 comparison videos covering some of my favorite games of all time, and the games I am comparing them with are both good in their own right, but there are nuanced differences that I don't hear really anyone talk about. I prefer to release video essays on subjects that are under-discussed, or better yet, not discussed at all. And so hopefully this provides a clear and fair picture of what's to come. The next time you hear from me, I will be doing my best to avoid pitfalls of my Breath of the Wild critique, and will instead be focusing as much as possible on the merits and shortcomings of the games I evaluate, providing my unique insight and avoiding being overly concerned with my personal feelings or projecting intentions upon the people behind the development. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.